Hello, my name is Maggie Otieno. I'm a sculptor by profession. I've been sculpting for the past 27 years. But initially I started as a painter. I've painted for 3 years and then I transitioned to sculptures. My main medium is actually metal and wood. I combine and mix the materials together to just give them a different kind of feel. I'm very passionate about art because I feel that creatives have so much to offer. And for me, I allow my materials to inspire me. Like for example, every time I walk around, I don't look down. I look at what's around me, what's in my environment. And sometimes there are so many interesting things that I see as I walk about or when I visit people. And I allow those materials to speak to me, especially materials that people discard and throw away and think that they are useless and they can't do anything. Those are the materials that actually really excite me because for me, I feel that they have stories to tell. And when I collect them and bring them to my studio, I transform them to capture a narrative that I have willed for it. And I find that most of the time when my mind is open to being inspired by anything and everything, it makes me more creative than when I put my mind in a shallow space where I have to just work with one certain medium. For me, I can define a muse as something that inspires me to create, that thing that gives me a high before I create. And why I say that is because as creatives, you find that there's something that you can look at, or something that you can experience, or something that you can hear that really captures your attention to the point that you just want to express it. And for me, I have had a lot of such experiences where I have seen something, or I have seen someone, or I have experienced an atmosphere that just triggers an inspiration. And the process of that inspiration can sometimes come with speaking to people, and sharing experiences. So I think for me, I'll share different types of experiences. One of my most exciting experiences comes with visiting the junkyards in Jogoo Road. There's this particular junkyard on Jogoo Road where it's a go down and there are all sorts of car spares. And what the lady who owns the space does is that all these car parts, I think they get their spares from maybe garages and elsewhere. And every time I go there and just see the car parts, I try to spend a lot of time there. Why? Because for me, I like listening. And sometimes someone can say, how can you listen to materials that really don't speak? But whereas some materials may not be speaking to one person, for me, those materials speak for me. Because in my mind already, I'm just imagining what is this material trying to say? What can I do with it? And sometimes I don't necessarily have to know how I'm going to create it, but just how it was engineered and created, I just collect those materials, I bring them to my studio. And when I bring them to my studio, I just start speaking to them. How do I speak to them? One of the things that usually happens to me is that I sketch a lot. So in my mind, I'm trying to figure out this material, how will it play with what I have in mind? Apart from Jogoo Road, I also visit a lot of places where they just sell scrap. The scrap can be plastic, it can be glass, it can be metal, it can be wood. And for me, sometimes I'm not looking for something specific. Sometimes I'm just looking for a strange shape. I'm looking for something that is broken. I'm looking for something that is distressed. And sometimes people ask me, why do you work with materials that look old and torn and shattered? And for me, it's because I want to give them a new life and I want to beautify them. For example, the railways, I work a lot with railway sleepers. When you look at that piece of wood, it's normally it's old, it has a lot of cracks, it has a lot of holes. And sometimes people make jokes and say that kitu inakaa kama kuni. But when someone is thinking about that firewood, for me, I'm thinking about a particular piece of art. And in fact, even for the people who choma makaa, sometimes I can visit those places just to get pieces of wood that are charred. Because for me, I feel that when you rescue something that's being discarded by somebody and you create something so different in an artistic way, and you show it to the person who was throwing it away, they'll actually be amazed that you actually used that to do something. So for me, experience has taught me, my 27 years of experience in art has taught me that nothing is really a waste. Nothing is really a material that can never, ever be used. Nothing is bad, because in art, we turn those things that people say they are bad, we turn them into creative, beautiful spaces. And for me, when I see my material taking a different shape, taking a new shape, it inspires me more to start working on something different. And most of my work, I don't work like on single artworks. I work in a series. So if you take a look at my space and the kind of work that I create, you'll see many of one piece in different sizes. Because for me, I feel that those things tell different stories, and I want my audience to be able to experience those stories. I'm also the kind of artist who doesn't like people putting like a title to the work. I want you to experience this piece. So for example, I can take a piece and say, this is a traveler. But for you, you're not seeing the traveler. So I want you to experience your own journey. So for me, when I'm inspired by anything and everything, what I just mean is that you can give me any sort of material and I will not be short of inspiration. I will create something beautiful out of it. Usually I draw inspiration from my muse by having different sketch pads. I find that when I do sketches, it helps me to look at my concept in different ways. And the good thing about sketching is that whatever I sketch at the beginning, in the next 4 days usually changes. So it's sort of like a storybook. When you start like once upon a time there was. by the time you finish and end the storybook, it's very different from how you started. So I draw a lot, I sketch a lot, and these sketches are also just inspired by the materials that I've collected, my experiences in terms of what people are speaking to me about, what I'm hearing, what I'm listening to. And I find that when you sketch, sometimes that sketch does not translate to that physical work that you hope to do. So sometimes I take a series of sketches. So let's say, for example, I'm doing a piece. I can have even up to 10 sketches for that one piece. And at the end of the day, that inspired sketch, I might end up doing maybe three pieces from that, from the different sketches. So I find that when I draw a lot, I'm also speaking to the sketch, and the sketch is also speaking back to me. So before I delve into the work, I would take a material, and that material, as I am working with it, I will try and look at my sketches. And sometimes what happens to that material is totally different from what the sketch was about. So I don't allow my sketches also to dictate too much to me. So for me, the inspiration behind my muse is just doing a lot of sketches. And I'd advise young artists or people who want to get into, sculptures to just keep on sketching, keep on sketching. Another thing is that when it comes to my muse, I observe a lot. I'm the kind of person who I can go into a crowd and I'm just observing people. Like if most of my earlier works were mostly hands, I would draw lots of hands. And why I used to draw hands is because I was inspired by the way people speak with their hands, like gesturing. And for me, that was such an interesting thing because fingers are really interesting. They have a way of speaking in a language that is very difficult to understand. But for artwork, sometimes you don't need to understand it in order to appreciate it. So for me as an artist, I observe a lot. I look into stuff a lot. I ask a lot of questions. And I also do a lot of research. The kind of research I do, for example, if I'm working on wood, I want to know where did this wood come from? What was this wood used for? I'm researching if I mix this kind of wood with another type of wood. Like, for example, if I mix jacaranda with pine, how will they look like? So my work has a lot of research to it. I write also a lot of notes with that. And when I'm doing that, it also just prepares me for experimentation. So sometimes when someone looks at my work, they might feel that, I just did this work straight away. So before I do that work, I experiment a lot. I can come to my studio and just mix the materials to see, are they really gelling together? Like, for example, there are some materials that I work with from the junkyard. And these materials, you can't actually weld them. So they look like metal, but you can't weld them. So for me, it's part of the research. What kind of material can I use with my work? Am I able to weld it? Is it going well with my wood? Is it visually appealing when I'm done with the work? So I think research is really important for an artist. And most of the artists, I think we don't research, but it's a good thing to really research. I also read a lot of, I don't read a lot of books, but I try to study like old, those old sculptors. How did they used to do their work? So when I pick my materials, I just make sure that they are able to gel well together and that they are not off. And I think for me that is what makes my work sort of unique because I'm also very experimental. I experiment with the different types of medium. I use cloth in my materials. I use a lot of spanners. I use, what else do I use? I use a lot of found objects. And for me, I'm trying to build like that visual brand. When someone looks at a piece, they can say, ah, I know this piece. This is Maggie's piece. And for me, that's where the senses come through. Like when I am working on each and every piece, it's my, the feeling of my hands. I feel my sculptures a lot. I love textures. I try to implement textures in my work. I also try to feel my artworks a lot. You know, like the wood. I like my wood to be very smooth, because most of the time you find that for these distressed sort of pieces, when they look rough, someone thinks that it's a material that is not usable. So when I'm cleaning my materials, I try to really feel it, and I become very emotional towards my material. One of the things that I've noted as an artist, as in my journey, is that it's very important to be emotionally in tune with your pieces. Like there's a time I came and someone told me that some of your sculptures fell down, that there was a wind that came and the sculptures fell. You know, I felt like it was, for me, it was very emotional, because I don't just see them as these non-living organisms that don't have life. And I try to put my feelings and my emotions in my work. And that's why sometimes even when I sell my work and they go to someone's home, I usually tell them, is it okay to come and visit the pieces? So I try to make sure that emotionally I'm in tune with my pieces. And when it comes to my technique, I use spanners to connect my pieces together. Why do I use spanners to connect the pieces? It is because I want to create this mental image that I am repairing. There's something that I am repairing. There's something that I am connecting. There's something that I want to have a union together with. And it's not only appealing like to the eyes when you look at it, because especially when I go to buy the spanners, people ask me, unataka namba ngapi? And for me, it's the number of the spanner does not matter to me. It is how I'm going to use it. So that's how my technique works. I make spanners and I join them together with the mild steel and distressed wood. So once I have done my sketches and I've already zoomed into how I want it to look like, what I will do is that I will put all my materials together. I will put my wood that I have selected. I will put my metal out. I will put my spanners out, my welding rods, my welding machine, everything that I need to do that. So for the wood, usually I slice it. Once I have sliced it, and then I shape it. And usually I use a machine to do that. So I will shape the wood. After I've shaped the wood, I will sand it down to the texture, to the right texture that I want it to be. And another important thing is always to have like a tape measure, because measurements is very important. So whatever I have already thought in my mind, I have to see how small do I want it or how big do I want it? How heavy do I want it? How light do I want it? Once I have thought about those dynamics, then I can already have everything that I need to put together. So now my piece of wood is already shaped. It's already sanded. The next thing I will do is I will take my, my mild steel and cut it into the various shapes according to my sketch. Once I have cut the shapes together, then I will start joining the metal together. The metal I do by welding, And the welding, I actually do it myself. So I do the welding. Once the welding is done, I will start cleaning up the weld to just give it a really nice, fine shapes. Because what usually happens with the metal is that if you don't weld it right and if you don't grind it right, the edges are very sharp. And when the edges are sharp, it's actually very risky because it can even yourself, you can get cut. So once I have finished just cleaning up the metal and I have welded it to the shape that I desire, then I start thinking, how do I connect this metal to this wood? So usually with my connections, I drill into the metal and then screw the metal part into the wood, or sometimes I bolt the materials together. And then I have to determine well in advance, is this sculpture going to be freestanding in a garden or is it going to be a wall sculpture? So if it is a sculpture that's going to be sitting in a garden, I get a really heavy base for it. And usually what I do is that I get car spares, really heavy ones, maybe from big vehicles or trucks. Those are the ones that are like, most of them are brake discs. So I get brake discs and I join and connect them to my sculptures in order to make them stand. So that is usually the kind of process that I use when it comes to coming up with my inspiration. I also use different approaches in terms of materials. There are those materials that, for example, if I go to the junkyard and I get like car spares, most of the time I slice those depending on the kind of sketch that I have. And these ones are just normally for dramatic effects in my pieces. So I use a lot of these found objects to create dramatic effects in my sculptures, so that it's just not plain wood and plain metal. And how I come about this is there's an important aspect in an artist piece, and that is experimentation. And for me, when I mix these mediums together and I'm looking at those dramatic effects, it's just about experimenting. So sometimes you can find that the sketch that I did and the work that I have done are actually far from each other, because sometimes when I look at that work, I feel like there's something still that is missing. So that's why now experimentation is coming. So I can decide, do I put a cloth on this piece? And how will that affect the overall look? Do I put spikes on this metal, or do I put textures? So for me, experimentation is actually very key to an artist's work, because it is in experimenting is when you have an effect that you would not even have imagined. So not everything comes through sketching. Some of these things that we create just come as an after effect. You have your piece, now it's standing, you've polished it, and then you'll find that, maybe hapa wacha niweke, niongeze hii na niongeze hii. So there's a lot of other things that come into play just because of experimenting. So for me, I appreciate experimentation a lot, because through experimenting with the different kind of things, that is also what has encouraged my muse to grow and grow and grow. I've had those kind of experiences where you don't find any inspiration in the materials that you have. You don't want to come to your studio. You don't want to sketch. And for me, I feel that is okay for an artist, because as a person who self-expresses, you should never force yourself to do something that you know you don't have the energy or the high to do it. So for me, usually when I feel I have no inspiration, I feel like my materials are not speaking to me, and that's why I had said in the beginning, I converse a lot with my materials because I want to hear what they are saying and I want them to hear what I am saying. So sometimes if my material is not saying anything to me, I don't want to force myself to make it speak. And for me, those kind of incidences or circumstances, I just like unwinding. And I like probably reading like books. I read books and I have a lot of art books. So for me, it's just a way of opening my mind to other things because I don't have to be creative 24/7. I don't have to come to my studio every day if I don't have the inspiration to do so. So for me, I'm a firm believer that an artist should sometimes rest and do nothing creative. Experiment with other things, go and do other things that you want to do. And for me, one of the things that I do when I don't have when I have a block in my inspiration is that I do basketry. So for me, my advice is look for something else that you enjoy doing other than the kind of art that you do. So for me, I like doing basketry. And I experiment a lot with the colors. I work with a lady from Machakos to create some fantastic, lovely, colorful baskets. And sometimes that period of block can even take me 2 months. But what is the positive about that is that I am not doing nothing during that period. At least there's something else that is exciting that I am able to teach myself or to delve into exciting things. And another thing that I do when I have a block is that I start studying my sketches. And I've realized that I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sketches. Some of them I have never done any work to them. And so what usually happens is that I'm able to take those sketches and what I create is I create stories from my sketches. So in a sort of a booklet, so which is constantly growing. Another thing that happens to me when I have a block, I just live close to the animal orphanage. So most of the time I go there with my sketch pad. And I have some fantastic sketches that I've done of the landscape. I've done sketches of the buildings. I've done sketches of the car park. I've done sketches of the nature. So I try to make sure that my mind is actively doing something. And you'll find that for most artists, it is in that time when you have a block that when you come back, there's some ideas that flood in, but based on how you actually utilized the time when you had this block. I don't believe that an empty mind can come with the creative ideas. You have to constantly engage yourself doing things. Another way that I try to excite my emotions and my mind is by visiting artist spaces. You'll find me going to Kuona Trust, you'll find me going to the Go Down, you'll find me visiting my friends who are artists. You know, sometimes for an artist, just talking, kuongea tu, you'll find that you can get an inspiration from just visiting an artist studio. And there's some artists who don't visit galleries, they don't visit the museum, they don't visit each other, they don't visit art spaces. And for me, I'd encourage artists to really visit each other. And for me, that really helps me because most of my inspiration also is triggered by conversations. I can be having a conversation with somebody, and then when I get home, I'm like, hey, hii kitu nani alisema, how can I translate it to an art piece? Na huyo mtu tulikuwa tunaongea naye that time, they don't know that what they were talking to me about really inspired me. So those are the kind of activities I get involved in when I'm not able to come to my studio space. But I also try to mentor other artists and young people who want to do art. Like if you come to my space, you can see there are some children who come and draw things. So sometimes just entertaining another artist, allowing them to use my space even if I'm not using it, talking to them, answering their questions, inspiring them, encouraging them, talking to them about sculpting and things. Because some of the artists, younger artists, when they see that Maggie has worked for 27 years, they feel that maybe Maggie ananga hizo mablocks. But when they come and communicate and see that I also have the same challenges that they're having, it also helps them to get inspiration. So for me, I also like inviting artists and other people to my studio, and not only just to work, just to have conversations. And within those conversations, something usually comes up. So working on different sculptures have different kind of implementations. So I'm just going to discuss a little bit about my work, something that I've done from mild steel and railway sleepers. So this particular piece is called Sojourner. I try to make sure that I name my sculptures, to give them names, because that's the emotional part usually of an artist. So this particular piece, when you look at it, you can tell that it's a semi-abstract piece of a human figure. So you can tell that it has a head and a body. And sometimes people tell me, where are the hands, where is the nose, where is the... So for me, I don't put those details, because I believe when I put it in a simple way like this, someone can be able to understand and translate it. So usually when it comes to a piece like this, I have to know, first of all, the kind of size that I want. And then how tall do I need it? How wide do I need it? And also the weight really matters. So this is not even 1 kilo. Yeah, it's very light. So if you look at this piece, you'll find that it's one of the pieces of wood that I slice. And because I don't want to get rid of it, because you can see that it has some sort of dents. And for me, these are actually what works for me. I look at the uniqueness of a piece of wood, and I try to use that uniqueness to create that piece. So this particular piece was actually cracking in the middle. And because I still wanted to use it, I decided to stitch it. And when I decided to stitch it, I made sure that it was in a creative way, so that it looks like it's something that is intentional. So this particular stitch was not in my sketching. So as you remember when I was saying that what usually happens is that I sketch first, and then I try to translate my sketching into that piece of art. So sometimes you'll find that when you're creating your piece, something happens. Then what happens? Do you discard the piece and start a new one, or do you look for a creative way of working with it? So for me, stitching this was a creative way of putting this material together. So these are just stitched. And when you look at the back of this piece, you can't really see this metal. So what I do is that once I have sanded the wood and made it really smooth, I seal the places where there's metal, so that the work looks seamless. How do I join my materials together? Because usually when I work with the wood separate, I work with the metal separate. Now, once I have completed the materials, working on the materials, then I join them together. So you can see this was joined by a bolt. So what that means is that I just drill, and then I fix it using the bolt. For the base, once I've gotten the right base, this is just a circular metal, and then with the metal rod, I will weld that together, and then fix this with the small bolts. So when you look at this piece, it actually looks balanced. So there's the metal that balances with the base, and then there's bolts that matches with this, because balance is very important also when you're doing art. Someone should not look at the work and say, this piece was not well thought of. So for me, I work with the wood first, I go to the metal piece, and then I join them together. So starting and finishing a piece like this could take me at most 2 days. And then once I have finished with the work, I polish them with a clear varnish, so it looks nice, neat, and clean. So that is usually the process that I go through when I'm doing one of my pieces. Thank you so much for the questions. How do I market my work? Usually before I market my work, I need to make sure that my work is market ready. What does market ready means? Market ready means that the product is well completed, the product is ready for display, the product has a title, the sizes, and the price. So what usually happens is that for an artist to gain a market, you have to first know who is my audience, who is ready to buy my artworks. Are they students? Are they people who are working, middle class? Are they very affluent? Is it government? Is it expatriates? Once you have a list of the kind of people that your work is targeting, then you can start figuring out where are these people found. Like for example, for me, I would say that my artworks targets middle class, and my artworks also targets expatriates. My work targets corporates and government, because those are the 4 classes of markets that I've ventured into. And once you know that this is your market, then you have to start figuring out, where do I find these middle class people? How do I start approaching government? How do I access the expatriates? How do I get into galleries? So for me, once my work is ready, I usually take really good photographs, and I also make sure that I have a story to tell. So there are very many people who love artists to tell the stories of their work, because before I start selling to you my product, you have to know where I'm coming from, where have I based my storyline from. And I have to make sure that my photographs are really good and clear. And I avoid photoshopping, because sometimes you can photoshop a photo of your work, of your sculpture, and then it does not look anything like the way you sent it to your client. So for me, the market in Kenya, I can say, is ready to buy artworks. If you just know the right gallery, if you just know that right friend who has good networks, you can actually sell your artworks. And for me, when I started marketing my pieces, like now, if I tell you that this piece is 48,000, and then I have really tall pieces, you ask me, so how much are these? And I can tell you a piece could go for 1.2 million. And then you might ask, where is the market for this? So as an artist, you have to make sure that you have developed yourself so much that your market already knows you. Like for me, I can say that I don't struggle with the market, because I have clients who know me. I sell my work locally, I sell my work regionally, I sell my work internationally. How do I access the international market? I access international markets because I have a very vibrant and consistent website. I am very active on social media. So if anybody wants to know about Maggie Otieno, they'll either access my website, they'll access my social media pages, my Instagram, which is Maggie-Otieno-sculptor. I'm also very active on LinkedIn. And those are also, and I'm also active on Facebook. So those are the channels that I also use to market my work. So if anybody ever needs to know about my pieces, they can go to my website, they can see my pieces, they can see the prices. Another thing is that to market your work, like for example to government, because I do commission pieces, you have to have a portfolio, a physical portfolio where when there is a meeting and you're called and asked for your portfolio, you can actually hand it over. So sometimes artists, I can say they don't know how to write their portfolios very well, or they don't know how to market themselves really well, especially on their websites. So if you really want to market yourself well, even if you don't know how to take photographs, get someone who can take clear photographs. Make sure you have all the details for your work and prices, and make sure that you are always available on call, because there are some people you can call them and maybe you're interested in work and you never find them. So for me, marketing has never been an issue, although there's times when I'm able to sell my work. Sometimes there are slow moments, but it's something that I do for a living. So I actually live on art. So I have to consistently and actively market my pieces. So I'm not only in my studio working, but I'm also on social media marketing my work. I'm also in galleries marketing my work. And I'm also visiting other spaces and talking to them about my work. On the question of mentorship, I do mentor students who are interested in doing art. And I've just moved into a new space. So I can say in my new space, I have not yet had people who I have invited to the space. But I do mentor people, especially women. I find that there are a lot of women artists who are very shy of the kind of work that I do, which is sculpting, because I do a lot of welding, I do a lot of grinding, I do a lot of planing, and it's actually really physical work. So you'll find that most of the women artists, they don't want to get involved in the hard work. And for me, I can say that it is something you actually grow into. And once you get a hang of it, you will actually really enjoy welding. And I've done some mentoring with the Creatives Garage. There's a fantastic booklet that came out, and just encouraging the young girls about how to build your career in art, how to make it fun, how to enjoy it, and how it can actually work for you. I have also worked with a couple of young female artists in doing a public art project. We did a mural at Syokimau railway station. And for me, I wanted to specifically work with women artists because I felt that they have not really been exposed fully to commissioned art pieces. So it was an opportunity to give them that platform to work with me and just to do a public art. So I mentor students also. There's people also who want to do art classes and they tell me, Maggie, can you teach me how to do this? So I'm always open to that. I'm not that selfish artist who wants to die with their knowledge and understanding about art. On the question of government support, I can say that the government still does not understand our field completely. Because when you talk about visual art, someone would think about Maasai paintings, beautiful landscapes, flowers, birds, nature. But contemporary Kenyan art is far much wider than that. And I feel that we have made inroads with the National Museums of Kenya, because there's a active gallery that artists can go and display their pieces there. And there are opportunities actually where government sometimes commissions artists to do some work. But in terms of leveraging and seeing how contemporary Kenyan art can actually work for the country, I think government support is very minimal. And my hope is that this new current government can delve more into visual arts, because if you look at European countries, a piece that I am selling at maybe 60,000 Kenya shillings, because the market there is so wide, that piece can actually go for double that amount. And it is because those governments understand that visual arts brings revenue into the country. And they know that it is something that also appreciates in value. And for me, my prayer is that government can actually come and sit with the relevant art organizations to just explain to them how it is important to really support artists. And but what I'm happy with the government is that through this CBC, at least children are able to do art now properly. Like the art curriculum has been really entrenched into the system, which is really a big plus if you compare it to before. So it is my hope that as these young artists come from primary, as they go into secondary, as they go into universities, when they come out, they're going to find art institutions that are supported by government, galleries that are supported by government, and institutions that just support their work and their market. And in conclusion, I would just like to say that three-dimension work is exciting. Creating, for me, is a passion. And I've enjoyed doing this. And I want to be able to take my work to bigger spaces, do public art internationally more and more. And I'd like to tell someone who wants to venture into sculptures, don't just let it be something that you're thinking, let it be something that you act upon. There's so many outlets for sculptures, and you can come and visit people like me. My studio is open. You can come and experiment. You don't have to want to be a professional. You can come and experiment. But one thing that I'd like to advise is you have to be consistent. You have to have a record, which means you have to have a sketch pad, something that you always sketch and talk to your pieces about. And you have to have somebody who you know you can look up to, and someone who can encourage you, take your work through the process. So art is not hard, as our parents used to say that it is hard, you can't eat from it. Some of us are living from it. We are paying rent through it. We are taking our children to school through it. So don't feel that if you enter art, you will be a starving artist. A starving artist is an artist who is not working hard. A starving artist is an artist who still doesn't know which path they want to go through. So you can actually make a living through art, and you can find specific artists who can help you make a career through art. Thank you for tuning into my masterclass. My name is Maggie Otieno. I was your host. And if you want to find me on social media, on Instagram, you can find me on the below. Thank you.